All right, let's move over to LSU football. LSU recently demoted Brian Polian to a general manager type recruiting role, NIL, all that stuff that will be part of his responsibilities. Were you a little surprised that Brian Kelly moved off his guy after just one season with a depleted roster, which also affects special teams?
No, I'm thinking about actually, opening the show with this tomorrow. If I'm an LSU fan, this is one of the best signs that you can possibly see. And you say, Jake, what do you mean? They're demoting a guy that he hired. How could this be one of the best signs? That was his first hire. All right. And the Polian name, whether people like it or not, has a lot of pull at the high level of football, college and the NFL. All right. It's just not some run-of-the-mill person that nobody knows about. But what it tells me is Brian Kelly is not here to make friends or help famous people's kids or give anybody too much than what they deserve with what they prove on the field. He is here to win. He is not here to appease. He is here to do what is necessary, whether people like it, whether people don't like it, in his personal, private, or public life, to do what it takes to get LSU back to where he believes and where LSU has been in the past. It is an unbelievably healthy sign for the LSU program for people who may be worried that, Brian Kelly may, kind of pucker up to the big boys a little bit too much. No, this is him making a decision saying, listen, I would rather lose a little bit of our friendship than lose a little bit of a chance to win a ring at the end. I think if I was an LSU fan, I would be ecstatic about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And another thing, I told people not to worry about him making moves when he needed to, because a lot of people don't realize that his current offensive coordinator for LSU, Mike Denbrock, was also an offensive coordinator for him for, I think, 2 years at Notre Dame. Well, Mike Denbrock was a groomsman in his wedding, and he demoted him from offensive coordinator back to just a tight ends coach when he was at Notre Dame. And so I said the entire time, look, Brian Kelly means business. He doesn't care about prior relationships or anything like that. He's an ultimate professional, and I think you hit the nail on the head with LSU just doesn't have another Les Miles or Ed Ogeron hiring his buddies. He's here to win and win long-term for sure.
Yeah, and again, when you have organization, when you have accountability, and when you're watching the guy at the top as a player, imagine being a freshman or a player that's lower on the totem pole, and you're looking around saying, look, right now, if you're a player on that team, you're looking around saying, hey, look, guys, y'all better handle business. Coach Kelly isn't messing around out here. This isn't, it sends, not that you ever want to demote somebody or you ever want to fire somebody. You want all your coaches to do great. You want them to go on to do great things and be successful and all that. But again, watching the head man practice what he preaches to you. Those kids, when they lay their head down the pillow tonight, no, listen, I got to keep fighting for my job. Even when I win it, I have to go out there and perform, because if I don't, there's consequences. And that is where you want to get to be when you are practicing what you preach.
So now they got to find another special teams coach to bring that performance onto the field.
All right, Nick, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it. All right, I'll do it.
There we go. I don't know if they can afford you, man. All right, so you're a special teams. I'm glad you brought that up because you're a former special teams coach. So I was thinking maybe that you can give LSU fans some hot coaching names, some great special teams coaches that they're not. Special teams coaches aren't as as sexy as say the new offensive coordinator that's getting the Broyles Award every single year. But what are some hot special teams coaching names that you think would be a fit for LSU and Brian Kelly?
Well, look, I don't think this hire is, and this is going to sound crazy, but like you said, the special teams coordinator position is kind of different. All right. And typically guys that coach positions, some staffs have special teams coordinators. Some staffs say, all right, here's what we're going to do. You're the tight ends coach. Well, you're going to coach the punt team. All right. The receivers coach is going to coach the return team. And they mix it up like that. So regardless if he goes with a true special teams coordinator, which I believe he will because that's what he's done in the past, or he decides to split it up, I think this hire is more about practice and identity than anything, because I think where Polian screwed up isn't because Polian doesn't know football, isn't because he doesn't know what to do on special teams. I feel like he overcoached those kids when you watch what LSU was trying to do. I did not go to one LSU practice this year, but I guarantee you their special teams drills were so freaking intricate that it probably took them forever to do, and it was so narrowly based. And you don't have to be on special teams. Special teams is nothing but an offensive or a defensive play from a bigger amount of space. What is kickoff, return, and kickoff? It's a run fit and a run play. You have counter runs, field runs, boundary runs, lead runs, even though you can only do two-man wedges now. So I think it's more than getting back to the basics. And when you do that, you can still be versatile and complex enough to not only have a good game plan but make adjustments, but you also let your athletes eat on special teams. Just like offense and defense, you don't want them out there thinking, because there is paralysis by analysis on the field, especially when they already have a common misconception that special teams, because it has the word special in it, is somehow different in a form than offense and defense. It's really not. It's just a little bit different geometry-wise, and you get to kick the ball. Those are the two things that are different. But at the base, it is an offensive and a defensive play from a further length and different formations. And once you understand that, and you remember, it's about blocking and tackling and making good decisions and keeping contained, guys speak that language. So LSU needs to hire somebody, whether it's a true coordinator or they divvy it up, that understand, let's be simple, let's be effective, and let's let these kids play fast, because we've recruited at a very high level.
All right. Well, I guess one more question I'll ask you about this particular topic. There's been a lot of talk about LSU stealing Ole Miss's special teams coordinator, Marty Biaggi. I don't know if, I'm not saying you are going to know anything about that situation, but just from your observation of watching Ole Miss last year when he was hired, what did you think of Ole Miss on special teams? Anything that stood out or is concerning?
Well, if I remember correctly, I think they did the two-man shield on punt, which I'm not a fan of. You're allowed to rugby, you should rugby. Let everybody understand that. In college, they let you rugby punt. You should rugby punt every single time except backed up. I think it's crazy if you don't do it. You've seen guys that have different variations. I don't understand why everybody doesn't do it, but I believe he did a two-man shield. And look, when it comes out, excuse me, it's just like everything else. When it comes down to kickoff and kick return, a lot of people run similar stuff. So, look, you're going to have twists when you know when the double team is coming. You're going to be able to shade guys and teach them quadrants. You're going to talk about fits at the final quarter of the field, half quarter of the field, midfield, things like that. So, again, but you don't want somebody that's going to come in here and do a bunch of crazy stuff either. You need somebody that understands how it works. If you want to get exotic and fakes, knock yourself out. That was me. It was so funny. Like, one moment when you're the special teams coordinator, you're just, like Andy Warhol, just drawing just soup cans. Nothing really crazy, what everybody else does. And the next minute on fakes, you're like Jackson Pollock. Just everything's just crazy. Just throwing the paint at the canvas and just doing whatever. I had so many fakes. I had more fakes than like the worst kid you knew in high school. Like it's just the truth.
That's pretty funny. All right, well, last question for you, and then I'll let you go. I didn't see this until you brought it up on your show earlier today, but Deion Sanders had some interesting comments that he told about his recruiting tactics that he spoke about on the Rich Eisen show. And basically, for people who didn't hear it, Deion Sanders basically said, when it comes to recruiting quarterbacks, I want them to come from a two-parent home and have at least a 3.5 GPA. But when I recruit defensive linemen, I want them to come from a single-parent home and have, grow up poor and all that other stuff. I'm just going to give you the floor, seeing as you're the former college coach, and you can probably speak to this more than I can. Is this controversial, or is this just something that people outside of coaching are hearing for the first time?
Well, if he was white and said that, it'd be a whole hell of a lot more controversial. But here's my thing. I've heard this. We people have joked about this. I've heard this for a million years. And this is what I told. If you're triggered by this, come on now. The same people who are triggered by this are triggered by Tiger Woods handing the tampon to Justin Thomas after he outdrove him on a hole to Genesis. I mean, can we just be able to take a joke every now and then? If you watch the clip, it's in jest is what he's saying. I promise you, if there's a 5-star defensive end who comes from a two-parent household and is the smartest kid on the block, Deion Sanders in Colorado are taking the kid. But I'm more about actions than words. Deion Sanders, I don't agree with everything he does or everything he says. I think he goes about it in an interesting way, kind of Lane Kiffin-ish in my opinion, if you really boil it down to what it is. But what he was saying was that he wasn't going out there saying, you know what, I hope there's a bunch of single mothers out there. Fathers, you need to leave. If you want your kid to play defensive line, leave. We'll sign up in Colorado. That's not what he's saying. Deion Sanders has 5 kids. He's been divorced twice. But you can still co-parent and be strong and involved and love your child. And Dion, like I said, he has 5 kids, and they're all successful, productive members of society. He's been in their lives the whole time. So I'm about action, not words. And I think that people like, oh boy, from USA Today that was just crying so much he needed a canoe and some paddles. Like, he doesn't understand it. Like, the way that Dion said it was in jest. So we talked about it today. I just feel like we get so upset so easy. Now it sucks. Like, we're living in the death of comedy age.
Yeah, no, that last part I definitely agree with. Yeah, well, whatever. I get what he was trying to say. He was basically just saying, look, it takes a different mentality to play defensive line versus the mentality.
Look, it does. It does. They're 2 different sides of the ball. But again, at the beginning, he said, we recruit effort, attitude, toughness, character, and there was one other thing he said. Those are the attributes they look to for recruiting. But yeah, defense and offense is different. A lot of people think offense is more cerebral than defense. We all know that's not true, but that's the way it's looked at. And on defense, it's reactionary. You see ball, you hit ball. You need a little bit of anger, a little bit of that Boucher in you.
Yeah, amen, brother. All right, we'll end it with there, man. He's Jake Crain of Crain and Company. Go listen to his stuff at Crain and Company, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to their YouTube channel to watch it live, or and follow him on Twitter at JakeCrain_. Jake, you're the best, man. You take care.
Dude, it's always fun. Y'all be good.
Absolutely. Good stuff there from Jake. Yeah, now I think as far as I was going to talk about this, I guess, another day, but seeing as the news may break sooner rather than later before we get back on next week, there was some news about that I've been hearing about LSU's potentially next special teams coordinator. And the leader in the clubhouse, or at least one of the big leaders in the clubhouse that, from my understanding, interviewed for the job yesterday was Marty Biaggi, or I think that's how you say his name, for the special teams coordinator for Ole Miss. He checks a lot of boxes. He spent a year with Brian Kelly at Notre Dame, where he was a special teams analyst in 2016. And then he became a special teams coordinator at North Dakota, I believe. But he was also a special teams coordinator at Southern from 2012 to 2014. And I think his wife it's where he met his wife at Southern. I believe that's what I heard. But anyways, he's been in Baton Rouge for 3 years, coached at Southern, coached under Brian Kelly as an analyst for 1 year at Notre Dame. Was at Purdue and was a nationally recognized coordinator at Purdue the previous 2 seasons, and he was a 2-time finalist for Football Scoop Special Teams Coordinator of the Year. And also, excuse me, and also he has SEC experience as well. He's at Ole Miss. And from what I've heard is that he's ready to get out of Ole Miss after 1 year. He understands it's a dead-end job. He has connections with Brian Kelly. Obviously, he just probably enjoyed his time in BR when he was at Southern. And he just knows LSU's just a better opportunity that can win national championships. He sees where they're going with BK. And as far as if you're Brian Kelly, he checks every box. He's got connections with you, so you know what he's about because you've worked with him in the past. He has SEC connections, albeit just 1 year. He did coach at North Texas for a couple of years as a special teams coordinator, and he has Louisiana ties as well here in Baton Rouge, being at Southern. So that's everything you would want, and then some. And he's clearly proven at multiple levels, Purdue, SEC, Big Ten, Group of Five, that he certainly knows what it's about when it comes to special teams. So we'll see. I know there's another guy that I wish Jordy told me about this today. There's another guy that's in like the USFL who's a defensive line coach, or not the USFL, in the Canadian Football League, who's currently a defensive line coach or whatever, but he's a longtime special teams coordinator, and he's friends with Brian Kelly. He's another guy to look at, but another one to look at is also the South Carolina special teams coordinator, Pete Lembo. He's in his first year with South Carolina, but he is considered very much to be one of the best special teams coordinators the past decade or two, at least the past 15 years. And they led the SEC in block punts last season. So that's another one that I think people are looking at with those SEC ties. Because remember what I said yesterday. There's a lot of talk that Shea Dixon had brought up, including Billy Embody, that once Brian Polian had been demoted to that GM role, his job will be solely to deal with NIL and also transfer portal stuff from a national scale. Brian Kelly wants to really hone in on that southeastern regional footprint going forward and not get too much national like they were. They kind of had to go national to fill up the roster because you got to get bodies on the field and get players on the roster. And so they used their national relationships that they had when they were at Notre Dame. Now he really wants to hunker down and stay in that Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia footprint and mainly stay there. And on occasion, you get a Deshaun Womack from Baltimore. Because look, if he wants to come, sure, you bet your ass you're going to take him. But that's why I would consider guys with SEC ties that are going to be considered for this special teams coordinator job. So we'll see. Those are some of the names that I'm